Tell us what the purpose of the program was and why it was so secretive.
That's not our LNS though, is it? Well, if there's like a thing, it's rotating.
The Pentagon now confirms the existence of a secretive UFO program tasked with investigating reports of unidentified flying objects.
And they released video, including a 2004 encounter when 2 fighter jets chased an oval-shaped white object near San Diego. They also released a second video with cockpit audio as pilots describe what they're seeing.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA.
With the Pentagon's recent release of a classified UFO program, many in the rapidly growing UFO community felt vindicated, as they've been claiming for decades that the government knows about these objects, but is hiding it from the public. However, there are many theories speculating the intentions of this disclosure, and not all presume altruism or factuality. The new UFO video, which has been making its rounds on the mainstream media, is one of 2 disclosed by Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy, a self-described public benefit corporation, whose goal is to slowly unveil classified information, including apparent hardware and other forms of UFO evidence to the public. I've shared my apprehensions of this organization, and in regards to the 2 UFO videos they've released, have a range of thoughts on them. In particular, the video circulating the mainstream media is interesting, as it appears to show an object that rotates and shifts in ways that no other human technology we currently know of can. But what made the video a bit more interesting was when the pilot of the fighter jet said this.
We're getting a great look at it. This whole thing takes about probably up to 5 minutes from the time we show up. I get over to the 8 o'clock position, it's at about the 2 o'clock position, and I decide I'm going to go and see what it is, and it's about 2,000 feet below me, and I cut across the circle, and as I get within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerates to the south in about 2 seconds and disappears.
So bottom line, what do you think this was?
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight that when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
When presumably you expressed that belief to your superiors, what did they say?
Well, actually, we caught a lot of grief getting back to the boat, and it got passed off as an event that no one could explain. Now, keep in mind, they had been tracking these for 2 weeks prior to us seeing it, and this was the first time that manned airplanes had been airborne when the objects appeared.
This feels like a really big story to me.
But given how much time the pilot spent chasing this particular object down, and given that 2 weeks prior was spent tracking the habitual patterns of the object, many are asking why the video was a mere 30 seconds. Why did they cut the video off as soon as the object appears to maneuver in noticeably unusual ways, leading some to the conclusion that all of this is a kind of soft disclosure, which is analogous to forecasts or how we attain information through press briefings. Essentially, those giving the information know what's true, but the way in which the information is received is blurred or skewed or trimmed down to 30 seconds. I'd agree with this until To the Stars released another video where they personally interviewed the pilot, revealing more information about the same incident.
We start looking around because we're merged plots. Now you're into a visual arena, you're not as much worried about your radar, plus the Wizzos are going to do the radar stuff, but they're still looking out. And I look out the right side, and I see something in the water, and it looks like about the size of a 737 in the water pointing east. So you don't see an airplane, but if you've ever been out to sea with like an underwater seamount, as the waves come and there's something right under the surface, they'll break. Same thing that happens on shore. You'll break and you'll get whitewater. So this thing looks kind of like that shape. Looks, you know, really like if you put a 737 about 10, 15 feet under the water, the waves are going to crash over the top and you're going to get this whitewater. So we see that, and then so he's pointing east, so it would be on the right-hand side of the airplane, just forward of the wing line, is this little white, which looks like a tic-tac, which is why we call it the tic-tac, and it's moving around erratically, so it's doing this. It's not hovering, you know, it's moving, just randomly around, not fast, just kind of left, right, forward, and back. There's no rotor wash, which you would see from a helicopter. It's just this odd object. And so by this time we passed by it, and now I'm starting a right-hand turn. So we're going from, on a clock code, from 6 o'clock towards the 9 o'clock position. So at about the 9 o'clock, between probably 9 and 10, I started an easy descent, and I'm watching this thing, and it's just kind of randomly moving around this vehicle, and it's basically forward of the right wing by the cockpit, and then it goes back, and it's kind of moving around, like it was checking it out. I mean, that's kind of odd. So as we pass through about the 12 o'clock position and we're descending, it kind of recognizes that we're there and it starts to mirror us. So now think of it at the 6 o'clock position, we're at the 12 o'clock position, we're coming down and it starts coming up. So it's going towards 9 o'clock, we're going towards 3 o'clock. And I go, well, the only way I'm going to get this is to do an aggressive out-of-plane maneuver. So I dump the nose and I go from the 9 o'clock through the vertical down to go across to the 3 o'clock. So he's over here and I go like this. So as I get down to I'm probably about 60 degrees nose low pulling through the bottom, it starts to accelerate, and it has an incredible rate of acceleration. It literally is 1 minute it's there, and the next minute it's like poof, and it's gone. So I came up on the radio and I said, hey, let's just spin around and go back to what was in the water. Let's go see what was in the water. So we're right there. It's kind of below us, so I'm kind of heading to the east, so we do a 180 and go back to the location where we're at, and there's nothing in the water. So I call up the Princeton and I said, hey, do you guys have all this? And I was talking back and forth to the controller. We got into more detail of, hey, we've been tracking these things. They've been dropping from 80,000 feet. They come straight down. They hang out at about 20,000 feet. They'll monitor. They'll just sit there. We've had nothing airborne. And then when they're done, they go straight back up and they disappear. So I said, okay. I said, well, we're going to head back to our cap, which we're about 60 miles away, which doesn't take long in an airplane. So we start going back to the cap, and the Princeton controller calls us up, and he says, hey, I'll never forget it. He goes, sir, you're not going to believe this. I said, what? He says, that thing is at your cap. It's hanging out right where you're supposed to be.
This leads many to believe that this incident in San Diego is not intended to be disclosed in just one video and an interview, but in a series of videos, in a series of interviews, and other forms of gradual disclosure techniques centered around one very significant UFO event. And as you would imagine, the conspiracies among the UFO community are in full swing, claiming some in the Air Force made contact with these objects, attained certain alloys, had adverse reactions to them including nightmares, disorientation, all of which will be disclosed in the coming months, including the alloys. In my view, those claims are unsubstantiated nonsense and should not be taken seriously. Generally speaking, the broader UFO community is in need of an Occam's razor to cut through all their unsupported and frankly delusional conspiratorial claims. When operating around these ideas, many don't have enough apprehension or distrust. That said, too much skepticism can jade some of the most imaginative people in the world.
And so explain what you see on that video.
Well, so people I think have conflated the concept of a UFO with whether we're visited by aliens. UFO means unidentified flying object. Okay? This is a highly non-specific term.
Yeah.
It is so non-specific, it admits you don't know what you're looking at.
But what's driving that thing if not a space alien?
It's unidentified.
Okay.
So
that's not good enough.
Well, so the universe brims with mysteries. And so just because you don't know what it is you're looking at doesn't mean it's intelligent aliens visiting from another planet.
Yes.
You just said you don't know what you're looking at. So it's not, you cannot, as a next sentence, say, therefore it must be anything.
Yes, but you know what we're looking at. You stare at the cosmos for a living.
I'm not authorized to go beyond this part.
Wow.
You're in.
The speculation from the more eccentric wings of the UFO community in regards to Tyson's dismissal of the Pentagon video was far-fetched. Some claimed he's a government shill and is merely covering up the truth of alien technology, or that he's resentful because he isn't privy to such top-secret information. But the truth is that Tyson is correct. Video evidence of strange activity isn't evidence of anything other than strange activity. As to why Tyson wasn't singing the video's praises is due in part to his reputation as a science educator, and the fact that his colleagues, most of whom are credentialed scientists and academics, surround the world he lives in, none of whom care about UFOs, with nearly all considering the topic frivolous. I also think Tyson needs a bit more than a blurry video with an eyewitness to take this topic seriously. And this is a good thing. We need people like Tyson, because the day he's convinced, the world is convinced. I do part with Tyson, however, and others like him, who often imply that no substantive claim can be made on the basis of the video evidence we do have. In my view, if video evidence shows an object acting otherworldly, which this video certainly does, unless you can explain to me what object we have that can perform these kinds of maneuvers, the logical assumption that follows is that they are otherworldly.
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight, that when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
This does not mean that the claim is necessarily true, just that it's more likely to be true. Because there's always another explanation. What's important is measuring which descriptive claim seems to illustrate best what we're analyzing. For instance, in Ruwa, Zimbabwe, 1994, on September 14th and 15th, there were multiple sightings of unusual aerial phenomena by thousands of Zimbabweans. And on the 16th, 62 children witnessed the same event, describing it in the same way. I'm agnostic of their wider claims, but once you grant these children are not actors, that this is a real school in Ruwa, Zimbabwe, with real teachers, and the kids were analyzed by real doctors, all of which, as I'll show you, becomes impossible not to grant, as the location and people are traceable and verifiable. One is forced to confront which descriptive claim, worldly or not, fits best to this event.
In September 1994, John, who essentially specialized in child psychiatry, devoted a great deal of time to interviewing the children.
Something scared you, is that right?
Yes.
What scared you?
The noise.
What noise?
The noise that we heard in the air.
You heard a noise in the
Yes.
air? What was it like? Like a roar or a buzz or a hum or what kind of a noise?
It was like someone was blowing a flute. It was scary myself.
It was scary because you saw something yourself?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a little object hovering. It was quite big actually, and then there was little ones all around it. We saw something silver, and then we quickly ran to the logs, and we saw a silver thing, and we saw a man standing next to it.
What did it feel like when he was looking at you?
I felt scared.
It felt scared? What was scary about it?
Well, I felt scared because I've never seen such a person like that before.
Did you see the eyes? What did they look like?
They were going like that.
Where was the pointy part? Was the pointy part in here, or was the pointy part out there? Up there. And what was the feeling when you looked at the eyes?
It was scary.
They came running up here in such a panic. And I mean, even if we had staged it, they could not have run all together like that. Even if we practiced it, I don't know how many times. But they came up here like a living snake. And they just came, we were in a staff meeting and we just heard them screaming, ah, and then they were here, you know.
I was very skeptical in the beginning as well. I believed that they'd seen something, but I wasn't prepared to accept that it was anything supernatural or anything like that. But I think the consistency of what's been going on indicates that it was more than I was prepared to admit in the beginning.
Both of them were running. One was running in the trees, and the other one was running across the ship. Because there were also trees here.
Mm-hmm. The eyes were like more pointed as they came in toward the center of the head, is that?
And this was all black in here.
All black. Now you've made pupils. Did they actually have pupils or black?
White.
What?
The pupils were white like that.
You saw white in the center?
Yes, like that.
Mm-hmm. Was he near the silver object, or was he far from?
No, on top.
On top of the silver object. Okay. And did you look at him?
Yes.
Did he look at you?
Yes, then he gave me the creeps, then I stopped looking
Gave you
at
the
him.
creeps. They describe these experiences or these events like a person talks about something that has happened to them. And when you're talking with a psychotic who's telling you something and it's a delusion and you feel that it really didn't happen, I can tell. I mean, I know this is something that person wants me to believe, or they're frightened, or they're distorting reality in some way. There's nothing like that here. These are people of sound mind, by and large, telling me something that's they know that I might think they're crazy, and so they're a little concerned about telling me, and they're very full of questioning themselves and doubt, and I mean, and then they describe something very real and intense, a light or something happened to their body, or it's the whole quality of the way they talk about it is the way a person talks about experience that happened to them.
I was just a hard-ass journalist, skeptical as everybody would be, and it was the same story. And I started getting goosebumps.
stories are consistent. You think it's possible that one imaginative child had a story and kind of stirred the rest of them?
I don't believe. I honestly believe they saw something, but for me to actually draw a conclusion as to what it is, I don't think I could do that at this point in time.
My heart kind of went faster and then slower and then faster and then slower.
It wasn't just area school. There were a lot of different occurrences that happened over probably that whole week.
None of us saw it. We just happened to be in a staff meeting.
You looked at those children, they were absolutely credible. Even on television, you can look at their faces and know if they're bullshitting or not, and they weren't.
Well, I was quite convinced that this was something genuinely mysterious and real, and that I needed to think about, if this is real, then what does that mean?
And if you saw him again, what would you do?
I'll ask him some questions.
What would you like to ask him?
I'll ask him what is he doing on Earth and what does he want with us.
All of a sudden, it was just like imaging going through my head of a message, trying a communication. I describe it as like a telepathic communication. There was no talking.
I remember being very captivated by the eyes, and in that moment, however long it was, because I have no idea of the time frame, it was mesmerizing. It was absolutely captivating.
As soon as I saw it, I knew that this was something from another planet or something from out of this worldly space.
People need to know there is something else out there.
There is something out there, definitely.
If there was one experience I'd like to relive, it would be that particular experience.
I mean, you just felt nobody really cared. Who do you talk to? How do you understand it? It was just really hard.
It really does stick with me that something happened, something was out there.
He has never stopped talking about it. He has never stopped talking about it. And he has believed all the time that it did happen.
It was literally fear of the unknown, pun intended. You know, that's the best way I can describe it, but I'll never forget it.
And I mean, in a way, I guess there are times when I try and disassociate myself with like the experience and like what happened in 94, like trying to disassociate myself with what happened there when I was in junior school, but I realized I'll be lying to myself.
No one is willing to say that because we know that we didn't just make things up. Something definitely was happening.
But it was just that picture that it'll never go out of my mind, was the face and just the craft, you know, they'll always be there.
I don't know definitively what the right answers are, but I'm positive that time will provide us the insight needed to understand what's actually occurring in the intelligence agencies, why they've suddenly decided disclosure is a good idea, why they're filtering their information through To the Stars Academy. But one thing, however, is undeniable. Certain advanced, nameless technologies exist and can be found maneuvering in our skies. And governments all over the world have known about them for decades. And this claim does not require faith or belief, because this claim is a matter of fact.